Good evening. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Plymouth Historical Society program. And we're so happy that you're here. It'd be tough to do a program without you. And I know Steve's worked really hard on this. He called me at 6:30 this morning. And he was here. So just a couple nuts and bolts before we get started. There's 2 exits in case we need it. Of course, you came through one, and there's one in the back door. There's also a restroom back here. And I'd also like to introduce our other board members. So I'm Kathy Kelsey, and I'm president for the year, and working very closely with Terry Fifield. Could you stand, please? Who's vice president? But we kind of ping-pong the presidential roles. And then we have Mary Baldwin, who's treasurer, and Becky White, who is secretary, and we're really lucky to have Becky, who's also director at the library, if you didn't know that. We're lucky to have everyone, actually. Okay. And then we have Steve Brand, who's here, John Christ, and Lisa Lundari and Louise are past presidents. So they have a whole knowledge. And then there's also Mary Keatsman, who is our liaison with the library. And just a couple things about the programs. The next one is July 24th. And it's on this flyer in the back, and that'll be Rocky Wall Deep Haven. And I also just want to point out that there's all kinds of wonderful puzzles in the back, and a new one was just designed by Lisa Lundara. So it's to celebrate the 50th anniversary, so check that out. And I also have here another clipboard. If you're interested at all in being on our mailing list or being a docent, to help us out on Saturday mornings, we have a good time. We meet people from all over the country, it's amazing. Or helping us with archiving, which means when things come in, figuring out where they go. So I'm gonna pass this around, and if you're not on our email list and you're interested in any of those, please sign up. So afterwards, there's all kinds of refreshments, and Lisa tells me that there's ice cream donated by Common Man and Alex. So.
You don't have to be a man to eat it. Women can eat it too. So, yes, you're welcome.
So on our panel this evening, we have Steve, of course, who's worked really hard. We have Judy Farron over here, who's a direct descendant of Webster. Is that amazing? And Lisa Murray in the back that was pretty instrumental in doing a lot of renovations here. So here we go.
What about Judy?
Judy? Did you tell me?
I didn't tell you about Judy.
You didn't? No. You didn't tell me about Judy.
It's Judy.
Judy Floyd.
Judy.
Two Judys, but two Judy, two Judy, and then we have Mary Ann.
And
Mary Ann and Lisa.
Okay,
Okay.
good, that's great. Good to go. Well, this is a jolly crowd. Let's do a sound check and see if anybody cannot hear me. Is anybody having trouble? You're having trouble?
Microphone like this.
Okay. Do you if you came up front here, you'd have a better time of it, because I don't want to blast everybody else out. What's that?
It's a better chair.
Oh, well, you can bring the chair up front.
Speak into it,
Okay.
not at it.
Okay, I'll try. Angle it. Okay.
Yeah, speak about that. You have to speak.
This is this is going to be very tiring, and I'm going to get extra pay for this because I didn't anticipate this in the deal. All right. So thanks for coming. I really think it's perfect that you came, and I hope you were entertained a little bit by the title of our performance tonight, which is The Little Courthouse That Could. Does anybody know like how that possibly could relate to another saying that has a similar sound to it? The little engine that could. Yes, exactly. So the little engine that could had a saying. What did that little engine say? I think, say it.
I think I can, I think I can, I think I can.
That's exactly right. You guys all passed that test. So here's the deal. What you see here in this building is the result of a lot of people's effort and time and their conviction that they thought they could. Because it was not something that came down from the heavens. It was actually people who figured out, like, we need a courthouse. We need a system of justice. We need to reuse the courthouse. We need to make it better. We need to repair it. We need all those things. So every time that happened in its whole life, somebody said, "I think I can." And you people many of you are the people who are currently saying that and doing it. So I thank you very much, because this is a gem. This is a gem that goes way back. Now I have some crib notes. 17 pages, not bad, huh? So let's sort of start and let's not go too deep into it, but I think it's important to realize that in the early days, this was British settlement, and King George was the king in power in England, and there was a big contest in the world between France and Britain, and there was a lot of and it carried worldwide pretty much, and in this country it was the French joined with the Indians, and they were pretty much wanting to take over everything that the British had. So there were the French and Indian Wars. You've heard of them. The French and Indian Wars went on for years and years. Don't ask me how long. But I can tell you that in 1763, there was a conclusion to the British and French war. And 1763 is a very important year, because that's the year when Governor Wentworth, who was appointed by the king to be the governor of the province of New Hampshire, was able to. How are you doing? Okay, can you hear me? Sir?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, as long as you speak into it.
Okay. So the king wanted to expand his territory because he was king. They all want to do that, and even the ones who aren't king but think they should be. So he told Governor Wentworth to go ahead and settle the northern part of New Hampshire, Vermont, and so on, and because they had been afraid to do so before that because of the Indians. And I have some relatives back in the day who got killed by Indians down in Rye, my Rand relatives. But it was so we barely escaped. Our genes just barely escaped and made it made it to the present day. All but one of the children of this great-great-great-grandfather was died in the Indian attack. So it was a real thing, and they didn't really want to dare to come up and build their houses and do all that here. So they held off until 1763. And then along comes a bunch of folks that want to settle this place. So many of them had already scoped it out. They'd been here. They looked at the various territories. When the king employed surveyors and map makers to lay out the towns, he employed One of my relatives. I'm telling you, really. Josiah Brown, my relative, came up here with his chains and he walked through the woods and he laid out the town. Well, this town and maybe others. So he had a familiarity with it, and when he went back to the place where he lived, which was Hollis, New Hampshire, they all talked it over and they said, you know, this place to be named Plymouth was a really nice place, and it was it was highly interesting to people who have agricultural kinds of aspirations. So, because it had nice alluvial flood areas, it had southern facing hillsides for good, easy growing. It had water courses. It was easy to get to. That was important because you don't want to go over too many big hills like the Mormons did. You got to be smarter than that, right? So they wanted to go. They wanted to come up here the easy way, and they wanted to be somewhat flat and gentle. And the plain out here served that purpose. So there are a bunch of reasons they thought this was a good place. And so they got together, and in 1763, sorry, I'm going to need to have somebody hold this for me. No, you could, but in 1763, they decided to organize, and some of their members came here, and in 1764, they actually did organize in Hollis, and they decided who was going to be a proprietor. And who was going to be coming here on the very first occasion of settlement. So up to that point, no actual settlement. So the idea was come up, build a house or something, a log cabin, and go forward. So a bunch of them came up in 1763 and 64, and they started in. There was a lottery, and back in Hollis, where people chose what lot they wanted to take advantage of. The lottery was, we all drew numbers. The person who drew number 1 got his first choice of any of the lots, and number 2 the second choice. I think there were something like 40 of those people who actually drew lots. So they were the proprietors of the town. And because the last guy got possibly the worst lot, but maybe he had inside information. We'll see. So there was a scurry around town trying to figure out what we're going to bid on. And guess what? You know where the word. You know where the. Thank you. This is going to be interactive here, so I'm pleased that you're going. You know the word lot that we use to describe a parcel of land. Well, isn't it curious that that was arrived at by a lottery? Is it the same word? Who's the entomologist here? Anybody claim that? No in-house entomology. Okay. So something for you to all research to figure out. Yes, Gigi. That's a good question. So the lots were 3 lots. So every person who got land got it in 3 parts. The first part was alluvial floodplain. It was down in the marshy area and in places where there was plenty of water and and a good opportunity to grow things. The second lot was up somewhat from that, and it would be accessible to the agricultural land, but would be clear of flooding. The third lot was a much bigger piece, maybe 200 to 400 acres, and it would be upland. So it would be forest land and so on. And in later years, that land wasn't originally settled, but it became something for the kids and the grandkids and the uncles and the aunts to settle out. So That happens to be the case with the land that was under the house that I owned on Texas Hill. So Texas Hill, so a fellow named Jotham Cummings, Cummings Hill Road, was the son of one of the original proprietor, and who had received 3 pieces of land, and that upland became Jotham Cummings Homestead. He went up there, he built a house, 1780 maybe, 1780 to 90, and he married a girl from town, and her name was Anna Brown. Anna Brown. Anna Brown came from town. So, so guess what? What? That's good, right? You're getting it. Guess what? Anna Brown was a relative of mine. So Anna Brown was my cousin, of 7 generations ago. So she was the daughter of my great grandfather's brother. Right. So like, what a coincidence that was. I didn't buy the house because I bought the house because Bertha Favre said, young man, you should buy this house. And so Bertha said something. I was paying attention because Bertha was a force of nature. Thank you. A force of nature. A force. And I valued her opinion, and so we bought the house. There's more to the story. I'm not going to bore you with it. But it does show you that, like, the people bought land, there was a lot of exchanges going on, and there was a lot of familial trading as well. So David Webster was one of the people who arrived here in, I believe it was 1764, and he had been here before, and he was a very handsome, tall, accomplished person, and here to share his genes with us is his great granddaughter. So Judy Farron. So Judy is going to talk a little bit about David.
Let's see if everybody hear me okay? So I'm going to give you a real brief synopsis of what we call Colonel David, and you'll find out about the colonelness later. He was born on December 12th, 1738. He was a great-great-grandson of John Webster. John Webster came from Ipswich, Suffolk, England in 1635, and they settled in Chester, New Hampshire. Colonel David was the son of a Stephen Webster, who was a selectman in Chester. As he said, he was kind of tall, theoretically handsome, although we don't have a portrait. I wish we did. But his tastes ran rather to athleticism, hunting, fishing, rather than books. He was considered to have a robust constitution and had great physical strength, and was popular. He won respect of his elders in his courage and for his manliness. He did have a sort of adventurous life. In 1757, he was chosen by John Stark and Major Robert Rogers to become part of the Rogers Rangers, French and Indian War. He was the first picked for that group at age 19, and he served in the French and Indian War until 1763. He then went back to Chester, and briefly they moved to Hollis, New Hampshire, which is where he came from to get to Plymouth. But he returned to Chester, New Hampshire, and in April of 1761, at age 23, he married a lady named Elizabeth Clough. During their lifetimes, they had 12 children.
Wow.
But from what I gather, 4 or 5 of them died at infancy. So Elizabeth died in 1809. He then remarried Elizabeth Sarah Chase in 1809. Brother-in-law to David was Samuel Cummings. Samuel influenced David to move first from Hollis in 1763 and then eventually to Plymouth. After exploring the new settlement, he returned to Hollis for provisions and furniture. Fall of 1764, he drove an ox team to Plymouth and cleared a place for a cabin a mile south of the junction of the Baker River. And
You're talking about David.
David,
not,
yeah.
Not,
Yeah. This is David. So he built a small log cabin, which is going to be over there on the your left.
You see the roof. That's it. That's what you see. You have to imagine the rest.
From his uncle Abel Webster, he acquired land in the center of Plymouth from the river west along Court Street, southward on Summer and Russell Street, down to Webster Street to the river. So he owned quite a bit.
So it's where we're sitting now,
And it's everything, all the central part of downtown, the common, everything in there, which belonged to David Webster, and that was a pretty cool deal that he worked out with his brother.
Well, eventually this second tavern was built by his son William.
yeah, we can't go there. That's
Yeah.
too deep.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have to keep staying
Yeah.
with this, right?
but just so you know what that building is.
Yeah.
He did serve in the military in the Revolutionary War, and I won't go into great detail, but you can come up later and see. I have with me some of his original commissions as officer in the Revolutionary War. This one is dated 1775 as lieutenant colonel. I also have ensign in 1765. This one is captain in 1773, and this one is major in 1774. So these are signed with the seal of the colony of New Hampshire. So they're kind of fun.
We were a colony before we were.
He was active in the service in the Revolutionary War until March 31st, 1779. He didn't just sit still after that. He was elected sheriff of Grafton County in 1779. He was active until 1809 for 24 years, at which point he refused to step down, even though they had term limits. He argued that at the time he was appointed, they didn't have term limits, so it didn't apply to him. But he did manage to step down. And he managed to live to a ripe old age of 86. He died in May of 1824. So that's a brief history of Colonel David.
That's great stuff. So Colonel David, of course, is going. We have a question? Yes.
Another question. That picture, where is the river? I'm trying to figure out where that is. Where is the river?
Well, I don't know either.
Right side or
I'm
left?
guessing it's in that direction because it would be downhill, right? It would be downhill. So this building, I'm told, was in the vicinity, or the building that came after it was in the vicinity of the railroad station, right? So so the house, the original house that he built for his own use, then became, in the early times, became a tavern and a place for discussion and philosophizing and making nice with people. And maybe there was a drink. I don't know for sure. But let's say let's say probably it was a popular place. The tavern was the center of the social world there.
You
So-
brought your mayors there in service.
What's that? Oh, you did.
You did?
Okay, good, Charlotte. Thank you. I knew you. I didn't. Okay. Here's another one. This is another Webster over here. Okay, so while we're on this subject here, anybody else here aside from me, Charlotte, and Judy, who claims connections?
Or doesn't claim, but should.
Oh, well, we don't really want any non-claims. That would be too many people, so we'd have to go everybody, and that would be Arlene. Would you want to do that? Do you have a non-claim? Yes, she does. Okay, so, okay, nobody else. Dick,
What about Dick?
did the Flanders arrive here in the first wave?
1763-ish.
Yes. So Dick has ancestors who were original settlers. That was the question. And I was waiting for somebody to say yes, and Dick, I pulled it out of you. Okay. All right, thank you. So you see, there are people here who are on the same bloodline as the original settlers. There are probably more around here. Undoubtedly, there are more. Do they know? Oh, look, there's one. Yeah, look, now we got another one that is reluctantly raising her hand. She is a Willoughby, and her ancestor was John Willoughby, and what's that?
An elder.
An elder. He was an elder?
Yeah.
He was.
And his other son, John, so we're from John Willoughby to John Willoughby.
Okay. So I just wanted to illustrate to you that, oh my gosh, we're really kind of almost connected to our past, aren't we? And our past is pretty prescient for us, even today. So that's a good point that I made right there. You can clap if you want. Oh, I feel so much better now.
Another question.
Yes.
The massacre.
Gigi, this is two. You only get three. Okay.
The massacre, was that at that time, or was it before or after?
The massacre was before. Yeah. Colonel Baker came up here and he did his dirty deed, and it was all before. So I don't know exactly. Maybe somebody in this room knows. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. And we're going to let you look at it later. We're going to let you look.
She said that she thought that it was 1720.
I think the Baker massacre was 1725 or about, is that what?
Yeah, it's 1720 something.
Yeah, it was about.
Okay. So, in 1773, David Webster had a visit from. Sorry, that's not true. Yes, it is true. In 1773, David got a visit from the sheriff, and the sheriff said, I don't know if this is how he said it, but he said, when you signed this charter to become a town, you signed on as a shire town. A shire town was a town that was responsible for dispensing justice in the colonies, because not everybody was a good guy, and there was a lot of questionable things happening. So they needed to have a justice system, and so they needed to have a courthouse. And David somehow or other became responsible for it, because he was actually right in the middle of town, and they could find him because he had a tavern and everything. So David reacted, and he started to build, as it turns out, this building. So he created the framework with rough-hewn timbers. It was post and beam, and it was according to the plan that was put forward of 36 feet. Is that right, Mary? 36 feet square. So that's what you're sitting in right now, 36 feet square. David thought it would be simple to build it right close to the tavern, so he wouldn't have to go far to build it. And he and he got the framework up. And then one day, his wife, Elizabeth, thank you. Elizabeth came out and she said, David, how come there's no doors or windows? And David said, well, I'm not there yet, and I'm really having a hard time trying to figure out where they're going to be because I have to locate the stocks and the whipping posts near the doors. Now, this is an example. The thing on the left is a pillory, but this thing down here is a stock and a whipping post. So those were the things that were necessary for the dispensing of justice in the day in the courthouse. Well, what do you think Mrs. Webster said about that?
She bought a gun.
No, she did something better than that. She used her mouth. And she said, David Webster, are you kidding me? What is going on in your mind? I'm not having whipping posts and stocks in my front yard. So David was sheepily, David, yes, is there another
I think
interpretation?
this might have been the first case of NIMBY in New Hampshire, not in my backyard.
Yes, and who knew that it came between husband and wife? So David was respectful of his wife's wishes, and he took the framework down and he moved it to Russell Street, approximately at the corner of Russell Street and Pleasant Street. It's not clear to me. According to the story, he built it on his own land, and as I understand it, his land didn't go west of Russell Street. Maybe it did. So I'm thinking maybe it was on Webster Street, which would be appropriate because, hey, his name was Webster. He had a street all his own. So as did many of the early settlers, had their own street, pretty nice. And if you build it, you get to name it. So they built it there, and they put it in place, and it became the courthouse, one of two courthouses in the county of Grafton. The other one was in Haverhill. And along comes various parts of the all kinds of bad deeds, everything from spitting to adultery to I don't know why I got that to many things, stealing, rustling. David has a whole list of them in his head. The former judge, right back there, and so there was a lot of land deals, land speculation and quibbles over boundaries too. So that was part of what they did in this courthouse, and they dispensed justice. So they did it, pure and simple, and it lasted for a whole bunch of years until what happened? I think I'm getting. We got to this part now. The next thing that happened was Daniel Webster came along. Daniel Webster came along in 1806, and he argued his first case there. So if you attended the Daniel Webster event a while ago, you would know all about it, and I'm not going to tell you because it's your problem if you didn't come. So Daniel Webster did argue his first case. He lost it. He was a pretty handsome guy, and he was a storied person. He really had a lot of things going on. He was a lawyer, of course. He argued before the Supreme Court. He was a senator, he was a congressman, secretary of state, and he even ran for president at one point. So Daniel Webster's fame caused people to notice the old Webster Courthouse because they drew the association, and they said, oh, that's the place where, and that's at first how it was referred to as the old Webster Courthouse, because Daniel Webster was the guy. Later on, I'll tell you, has a second interpretation. Okay, so the courthouse stayed there on Russell Street until Grafton County built a new courthouse because they'd outgrown it. This wasn't big enough. Too much going on. There was no bathrooms. It was it was hard to operate. Basically. They built this building in the center, which was the new courthouse, and the old Webster courthouse now became unnecessary and redundant. So while it was in that situation, it became a paint shop for a while. It was a classroom. It was a schoolhouse, and at one point, it was moved. So the first move was to Russell Street. Second move was down to Main Street, and it was moved down there to become a wheelwright shop. Okay, so this is not a very good picture of it in its infancy. This is a picture of it in its extreme old age. But you can get the idea that it was for repairing wheels and doing all that sort of thing for all the people around. So that's where it stayed until, let's see, am I going to tell that story? No. What?
Over here,
Yes.
it's like 3 windows on that side.
All right.
It's the other side. It's shifted the other way. It was 2 windows.
Gotcha, thank you.
Right. It's a real excellent. Marianne is a teacher. She teaches herself first, then she teaches the students, right, Marianne? Right. So that's how it's done. Yes.
In the back, Steve.
Yes. There's a question back there.
Where did the name Grafton
I've read that, but I don't know the answer. It was like most things, I think, came from an English place, and but there may be more to that story. It's in one of our books. Oh, by the way, while we're on that subject, these are the Bible for history of this town. First one is the Stearns history, the green one. That takes you up through, takes you up to what does it take you to? I don't know. It takes you up, but after that,
1800s.
from 1763 to 1963, this book, and then we have 1963 to 2013. So you can actually follow along our history by buying these books, which we have for sale over there. Okay. I have to sell something. You know what was going on at the same time? There were a group of young ladies. And here they are. And the young ladies were very interested in learning and doing other things. And we have a young lady right here, and it's Judy Floyd. And let's not make any jokes about the young lady thing. That's not nice. But the young ladies are still vivacious as ever, and they have lots of plans. And Judy's going to tell us about it. Thanks, Judy.
You'll have to excuse me, I have notes because I'm so afraid I'll forget something. And it's a very important group that's affected Plymouth history for years, and not as well known as it should be. But in 1873, there were 14 young women in their teens. They were very young, and they were daughters of the prominent people in Plymouth. But they were very motivated to start a circulating library. And they had no money, they had no books, but they were determined. And I was so happy in my research lately that I found out a story I kind of remembered, that it was a teacher that inspired them. And you have to set the time. It was after the Civil War, and women's education was much more important in our nation. And they had this wonderful teacher. I stumbled across a story about her, and it said the Globe. There was no date, but her name was Caroline Howe. And the article starts by saying the young ladies always wrote down people that helped them along the way, and she was their first inspiration. This is a quote: "She was a true teacher and lender. She was committed to expanding the minds of her female students, not the men." It's just, that's right. They were well on their way, and so anyway, I want to be sure. Oh, let's see. And she said to them, and I guess I didn't write that on my notes, but she would invite these 14 young women to her house for tea. She wanted to expand their minds more than just in the classroom, and she encouraged them to use French phrases that she had taught them. And they spent a lot of their conversation learning about the importance of the word culture and how hard it was to define, but how wonderful it was to achieve. And I can tell I would have loved to have had her for a teacher. So anyway, that was their inspiration, and they just decided they were going to raise money. They had no money, no books. Books weren't available in Plymouth. They just changed that. And so good things happened to them. Uncle Jim, Uncle Jim Langdon, gotta be sure, Jim Langdon was the officer at the express office down near the railroad station. And he right away volunteered to give them a room, and he heated the room, provided the fuel. They had tables and chairs to begin. And they said they just performed plays, entertainments, concerts. They did poetry readings. They had fairs. They just did anything to raise money, because that's what they were going to do, get books available in Plymouth for all citizens. So that was their beginning, and all their work was well received. They became very popular, and John Bertram from Salem, Mass. Was staying at the Penny Jawatic House, and he was so impressed with all the hard work they were doing and the fun they were creating that he gave them $500. And these young women, yes?
That's James Langdon and that's Captain Bertram on the right.
Yes, right over there, so he'd like to take a look at it. Thank you, I was supposed to say that and I forgot. Notes are important. But anyway, so let's see, what did he do? Oh, page. And so they were off to a good start. They went to Boston, bought books, and let's see. So anyway, they were busy. They were so busy buying books and getting them out to the residents in Plymouth that their room became crowded, and they were kind of thinking, what shall we do? We're running out of space. And about in 1876, Senator John Blair was riding down South Main Street, and he looked at the field.
Wait a minute, you're in my speech.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And he observed this courthouse.
Just for clarification.
I won't say much more.
Henry Blair.
John, you see why notes are important. But anyway, Senator Henry Blair was so distressed because he knew this was a noble building that meant so much to our country, and he had to save it. He was just like the young ladies. He was determined and motivated. So he went right to where he could get in touch with the Grafton County officials. He got in touch with them. Can't do that. Okay, so, but anyway, he made a plan. I'm so sorry.
Delegate order.
Okay. So,
And what's that? So,
but can I go to the young ladies? I'll go back
Yes, I think you should go back to the young ladies, please.
And so it was just nice how they came together. Because here's a man inspired by an old building, wanting to repurpose it to a cause as great as it was in the beginning. And there were these young ladies wanting to educate and cultivate all of us around here. And the two just came together. And in the small town, they met and they made plans. And this was, my gosh, I'm so dry. This was the beginning of our Plymouth Public Library. The town, the young ladies maintained it for 112 years. They
Tell
still,
that whole story.
oh,
So you can, I mean, you can actually,
I need it.
this would be,
It
yeah.
can't hurt to have some overlap.
Oh, there is, yeah, of course. Just somewhere, I don't know what the word is.
Steve was so organized, we just looked at
I can give you a copy.
anyway, so they got together and good things happened for Plymouth. It seems like the stars were aligned. And then again in history, this happened with this little courthouse. I always think how little it was, and I know sometimes times are tough, and why didn't they just tear it down when it was all falling apart and use it for firewood? I'm sure some people needed it. But it just has kept on overlooking our town and taking care of us all. So anyway, can I say about the ribbon cutting?
Excuse me, but,
I
you know,
know
I
some-
think I heard somebody knocking at the door.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear it?
I just,
I think
they're
it came
still
from,
doing
I think
this.
it
They
came
take
from
care
over
of the
here.
building, do programs for our library today. We're very lucky to have them in our town.
Excuse me, I was wondering if you might be able to help me.
Well, I would be happy to help you. You know, we're having a meeting here, sir, but you're welcome to come in.
Well, I
Please,
won't,
please,
I
do
won't
co-
stay
please,
long. I
please.
just had a question or two.
Well, come right in, come right-
Blair's the name.
come-
Henry William Blair.
Henry William Blair? No kidding. Why? Amazing. How did you, were you listening at the door or?
No, I'm on my way to a meeting.
Yes.
And the strangest thing happened, it was like a cloud. And when the cloud cleared, I looked around, I didn't recognize anything. I didn't know where I was except I saw this building, and I swear this was the library, right?
Yes,
Yeah? Well,
I think so. I mean, but depending upon what time period you're talking about now. Let's get the mic.
you can tell me what year is this?
Well, this is the year 2024, sir, 2024. 24, that's a lot of numbers. I mean, think,
When I last looked, it was 1904.
oh my gosh,
Well,
that's unbelievable.
yeah.
And how did you happen to come to this door?
Well, that was the front door.
Oh.
No,
Yes, it was the front door. Of course you would come to that door
what's
because
the front
it
door?
was the front door, right, exactly.
I'm very
so-
sorry, I
so
got that
must-
mixed up too.
well, of course, it's not the front door now. It's the rear door. And we have some private things back there, but you wouldn't know that because, you know, you're working on pure instinct.
Well, I am just thrilled to see all you people in this building that I cared so much about so many years ago. And to see that it's alive now, I guess it's not a library anymore, or?
No, it is actually not, but it was a library for most of its life after you rescued it from its almost terrible demise. And looking at like that over there as a wheelwright shop. Do you remember that?
Yes, I sure do.
Yeah.
And I remember too that there was a big movement we started for public education. And I remember those young ladies who had just started that Young Ladies Library Association. And I got to have conversations with them, and darned if I didn't think, these are the right people for the library here in Plymouth. And you know, I went back to my days in the State House and the State Senate, in Washington, in the House and the Senate, And I worked very hard for public education, because I felt after the war that we would not heal in this country if we didn't do something to expand public education. And public education for our Negro citizens following that war, and for women. And so when those ladies came to me and started talking about a library here in Plymouth, well, I can tell you I was absolutely pleased. And I had bought this building because I cared so much about Daniel Webster. I don't know how much you know about me. I barely know much about myself. But I studied very hard to train myself, educate myself as a lawyer, because I was working for Mr. Great Attorney Loverack here, and I taught myself enough to be able to be admitted to the bar. And that was a big thing for me in my life. And I wanted to fight after the war. I was, of course, injured during the war, but I wanted to fight so we could save this country, and I knew that what we needed was broad public education, and I even advocated that the federal government get involved in public education. I wound up losing that battle in my last few days in the national government, but it carried on. And that's why I'm so thrilled that I see all of you here, and I don't know exactly what you're studying, but that this building is so alive, and I see all the history that's around you. I could not be more pleased. So thank you for all that you've done, and all those people I didn't even get to meet after me. You must have done a lot too. I'm just pleased as I can be.
Well, that's terrific. We thank you.
What an amazing coincidence, you know. So now that you came in what used to be the front door, would you like to leave by way of the current front door?
I would be honored if you could point me in the direction of where I'm going.
Oh, yes, so sure. First, the front door down here, the Charlie's is right there. And then I think, where are you going, by the way?
Well, I was supposed to be meeting someone in town.
Okay.
And I'm going to hope that cloud that passed by is on its way back.
Okay.
And I'm going to find the town that I left. But I have to say, too, that one other thing I'm very, very proud of was that I helped bring the normal school here to Plymouth. And it was just a couple of years, the year before that the state legislature passed a bill bringing the very first normal school to here in New Hampshire. And we fought, we did a little conniving, but we fought and we brought it here. And I'm guessing when I looked up this hill, there's Plymouth State University. That used to be the normal school that we started here quite a few years ago, before any of you were around, I'm sure.
Do you think maybe that building on the right up there might have been something that was part of the normal school?
That building is right up there, is it not?
Yes, it is, right up there. Well, it used to be.
The Holmes Academy.
Holmes Academy, exactly, right. Yes, indeed, that is correct. Your mind is working perfectly, sir. Perhaps we hope that your directions will straighten out and your time warp will be fixed
If I
as
could
well.
only remember all those years that just passed so
Oh
quickly.
man, right. Well, if you go out the front door, you'll be headed towards the future. And you came from the past, so it'll be perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you all
Thank you so much. All right. So does anybody know who the actor is? It was an actor. You weren't actually convinced that it was Henry Blair, were you? So that is Robin Dorff. He lives in Holderness. He's a stalwart in the ETC world, and he and I did one play together. Charlie. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate it. Okay, so let's see now. I think we're going to continue here along. So here's like a little curriculum vitae of Henry Blair. He didn't boast a lot, but this is a guy who did a lot of things in government at the state level, the federal level, was a plenipotentiary. How do you say that? Plenipotentiary. How did that work? Is that okay? Anyway, he couldn't pronounce it, so they sent him to China. But so Henry Blair actually, so what you see in this building is very much the product of Henry Blair's work, because it was looking like that, which wasn't too cool. And he put the new windows in, he put the new facade in, ceiling, I believe, and made it pretty and functional. So that is what it was. So here is the bill of sale, because Henry gave the building to the Young Ladies Library Association. So I think you should see that he referred to this as the old Webster Courthouse, which is how we are referring to it now. Not the Daniel Webster Courthouse, but the old Webster Courthouse. And he sold it to the association, Young Ladies, as he had preserved, repaired, and located it. According to the record, he spent $1,000 doing it. He had to move it from South Main Street up to here. There really wasn't much of a road out here at the time. So when we got to that point, that's what the entrance from the rear was all about, because you approach this building from this side, and we didn't have our extravagant bathroom at that time. So a lot of bathroom humor here. I don't know what's the matter with you people. Anyway, so here are the interesting words, and I think you heard Henry say them. He wanted this to be a reading room open to all well-behaved persons. Charlie, you have to be well-behaved here. And that it should encourage the collection of works of art, of historic mementos, curiosities, geological specimens, etc., so that the courthouse, under the ownership of the Young Ladies, would be a center of cultivation and a museum of rare and beautiful things, so long as its historic walls can be saved from the ravages of time. May we all be saved from the ravages of time. Not too likely, but okay, for the moment. So this was his. These were his wishes, written down by him, and I think it's quite remarkable that, in fact, now this is a place where artifacts and objects of art and plays and performance is held. So we actually, now he did talk about a library, but it didn't seem that was the only thing he had in mind. He was a little prescient. Not Prussian, but a prescient. Yeah, okay, got it, okay. Okay, so the Young Ladies Library Association, 1876 it started, and then they received this building in, what? 1878? Okay. Oh, well, okay, 1878. Let's not worry about it. It's just a year, right? What the heck? All right. So this is what the building looked like way back, and that is the rear door through which Henry Blair came. So, and you went up the slope and you went in. And of course, you don't see the courthouse, because I don't know which one it was. Was it the one that we showed in the last picture, or was it the one that's out there now? I don't think it's the one that's out there now. And then eventually the town improved the roadway out here. They paved it, and we made this the front door. And for winter purposes, we had a fine little airlock. I guess you get in there, you could probably stay there if you wanted to. But so they were concerned about heating the place as we still are today. As we still are today. Okay, then the next thing was in 1959, this building became the town library. So it was a library still, and it became the town library because the town took it over and they operated it when they had some librarians that operated. Anybody know these names? I don't know. 1959. That's a ways back. Sammy, you might have been here. Well, your mother was part of this. She was an assistant, right?
But the lady, I think, that had the librarian in that time slot was a lady named Ernst.
Okay.
And her husband, Tony, went to college,
Oh,
got business.
right. So your mother's name was Sargent, of course, last name.
Ruth Fry.
Ruth Fry Sargent. Okay, does that ring any bells? So could any of these ladies be Ruth? Maybe. So here again, the connections to this building are great and broad and lengthy. So one of the things that happened in the library at that time, yes,
So they put
Sure.
any later than 62 or 63 that the library was Dickinson. And I wish I remembered what her first name was. But
was it Emily? No.
Yeah.
Uh,
I might have spent more time with her when I was in
Right.
6th grade than I did with my mother.
So we have actually a person here in our midst, and you could add in, who Marianne Hyde Saul, who's right here, and she and I grew up kind of contemporaneously, and we remember coming here to the Children's Corner and other places, and Marianne's going to tell us a little bit about her experience in those times, and here she is.
I don't really have tons of things to say, but I do have to acknowledge that one of my biggest addictions started here. And that addiction is to mystery novels, which I consume avidly. And it started with a particular series that I bet many of you might know. It was particularly popular with young women. Do you know who I'm talking about? Nancy Drew. Yes. And so it was right here that I first encountered Nancy Drew and waited just with bated breath for the next one to come out. The other thing I remember in particular, besides just doing my homework here and sometimes being told to be quiet, what is that at that time, the library was quite small, and so like many libraries in New Hampshire, it relied on the bookmobile that came here, I believe, from Concord, from the state library, to bring in either books you ordered, or if there were new books that this library couldn't buy yet, because they couldn't afford to, you could order them, you could borrow them from Concord. And I think it came by, well actually, does anybody remember how often it came by? I know it was at least once a month, it might have been every 2 weeks, but it was right out there, and it was just so exciting to go and see if your book had come in. That's it.
You have something to add about your early experiences here?
So every time a librarian starts shooing me out 20 minutes before the library closes,
Yep.
I think back on Mrs. Dickinson. That was all I knew her as. And she lived in Bridgewater next to the one-room schoolhouse, now town clerk's office in Bridgewater. If she knew I wasn't quite finished, she would stay. She would me out.
You were special. You were special. No question.
No, I was not special.
Oh, okay. You are special anyway. Okay. So do you remember that there was no bathroom?
Yes.
Well, there was a solution. There it is. 1970. It took us until 1970 to have our indoor bathroom. And it is right out here for your inspection a little later and possible use. It is very small and quite insufficient for the building, but it does the job. And it's part of something that we were hoping to correct at some point. But let me talk to you a little bit about what else went on in this building. So there was not only a library, but there were historic exhibits, which eventually became part of the Historical Society. And at one point, my mother and other industrious people, mostly ladies, decided that this building and the other buildings around town should become part of a historic district. So they did a lot of, I remember her sitting at the typewriter, because it was a regular typewriter, it wasn't no word processing, typing out the application for the historical district designation, and we got it. So you're sitting in history right now, and you're enveloped by it, and I hope it feels good. So, because a lot of people work very hard to get this on the National Register of Historic Places. And so, this is some words I'm going to say. You probably don't need to read these. But in 1991, this building, the Pease Library, was created. The young ladies actually had a very fortunate gift from Charlotte Pease, and they were able to convert her homestead place and her money into the library that we have today, rendering this building, once again, unnecessary to that particular purpose. And once again, yes, we can. We're going to do something with it. So, guess what?
What?
Thank you. Guess what? They actually decided, oh my gosh, we have some people who are interested in the history of this town. So they started as Plymouth Historical Society as a home for their growing collection of archives, blah, blah, blah. And it came to pass. So Plymouth Historical Society. And you are now the hosts of the Plymouth Historical Society when you come to this building. And they are the people that's done all this fine work, including the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Society this year, and also the 250th anniversary of the building. Interesting, tidy coincidence. It's like a twofer. You don't get better than that, like two celebrations in one. We might even have ice cream. Let's say, possibly. Okay, so when the town had its 250th in 2013, this was the center of activity. A lot of planning going on here. There were displays in the place. There were people conversing. Here's a couple of people that we know well and love who are up to something. But Bill had his 250th anniversary button on, and Kathy was in regalia, right, Charlie? Yeah, she had her colonial attire on. Bill, yes, that's a little known and possibly somewhat unusual situation that Bill was a young lady at one point. So there were other young gentlemen, young ladies. Kurt Schroeder, okay.
Oh, Bob Crowley.
And Bob Crowley was a young lady. Whoa, now we're getting into some stuff. Anybody else? Okay. LGBTQ, let's see, YLLA. All right. So displays, and oh my gosh, the 250th ended with a disaster. So what happened was that part of the ceiling fell down, and it fell down on top of all of the displayed items below it. And it was a horrible looking thing when we came in to look at it. And we had to bring in little people with to pull it up so that it wouldn't actually crush everything. But as it turned out, we actually saved quite most everything. Henry Blair survived. There he is up there. And the desk, the original desk, is still with us back here. Am I right about that?
Under the window.
Under the window, in hiding. We were pretty lucky in terms of artifacts. They all survived it. Yes, Marianne.
Who repaired Henry's damage?
That was a Band-Aid. That was a Band-Aid. They were trying to. That wasn't a Band-Aid.
I don't think so.
I think that's a reflection. I don't think he was.
But he
Yeah.
was damaged.
Was he?
He was damaged.
Who knows? Anybody know?
Northern Exposure did all this, in portraits. They did find it out.
Okay, so there was some folks who did a great job of top-notch. Oh, those are the tree guys. The Northern Exposure did the restoration. Okay, so Henry's still looking pretty darn good right there. So what did we do? We caused a partnership to happen because we needed to repair the ceiling. And oh, by the way, since we're doing that, and the place is going to be out of commission for a while, maybe we should look at some other parts of the building that needed attention. So we formed this partnership, and there were a bunch of us that got together, and we referred to ourselves as the Old Webster Courthouse Committee, for short, OWC. So and we got going, and I'm going to let Lisa Murray talk now, because Lisa was one of the important people on that committee. She was very important, and she was highly skillful at doing grants and other things. And so she has 100 notes here. And would you like this?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you,
Good.
Steve.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. I was actually Steve's second choice to speaker tonight, so I'm standing in for Paul Turley, who gave me some notes as well. So as Steve said, we formed the Old Webster Courthouse Committee. I was not a member at the beginning. Through Alma Grand, who wasn't a member, she asked Sally Grand, doesn't Lisa prepare grants and write grants? Why don't you ask her if she'll be involved? And so it's hard to say no to Sally and Alma. So I said yes, and I thought I was just writing a grant, and I was still there 3 years later. So this committee, I joined in 2016, and I just want to list off, if you're here, raise your hand. The members of the committee were Steve Rand, Judy Floyd, Paul Floyd, Kathy Hillier, Mary Crowley, we miss, Tom Saman, Manuel Sterling, we also miss, Gloria Sterling, Alma Grand, and Lisa Lundari, and Trish Lindberg. And at the very end, even Paul Turley, who was our clerk of the works to do the repairs, decided he would also join the committee, which was very nice. So we were also a group that said, we think we can. And our goals were to accomplish repairs and upgrades to protect the courthouse structure, so it could be here in another 100 years, hosting another event like this, to establish a temperature and humidity controlled space and appropriate fixtures and resources to protect the historical documents and photos and so forth, to ensure access to the structure and its contents for all members of the public, including the physically handicapped, and to accomplish these goals through civic engagement, private and public contribution, and volunteer service. Sounds very fancy. You can see I'm a grant writer. So we set about having a capital campaign to raise some funds. There were 2 grantors that we sought. One is the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance that gives out money to save buildings like this every year, thanks to our tax dollars. And they usually give the seed money so you can prepare to do a bigger L-chip grant for the Land and Community Heritage Investment Program. Both of these grant programs are matching programs, so we couldn't just apply for the money, send it in the mail or upload it online and wait for the check. We actually had to go and raise our own half of the money. And I do think that is a wise thing that a lot of organizations do so that we do have that civic engagement. And we weren't boring. We had a lot of really creative ideas to raise the match. We were shooting for about $90,000. One big event that we had was the barn raiser. It just so happened around the time we were ready to host a big event to do a fundraiser. Alex was finishing the restoration of a barn from the Peverly barn from Canterbury, an 1820s barn. So we loved it that we were going to have the event in a historical place. And that was a really, really fun evening that raised a lot of money towards the match. But we also did other interesting things, and we called it the Future of History campaign. I loved that name. And all of these things look really good because of the talent of Lisa Lindari, so I always want to recognize she was such an artful craftsperson. And she's amazing. So everybody on the committee said, well, what can we do? And Trish Lindbergh said, well, I can propose this as a cluster project at Plymouth State. So we like to have that partnership with Plymouth State, and I think some of the students helped with other things about this restoration. I don't have those details today. But you hosted a theme night, right? Do you remember the name of it?
Called the Celtic Cabaret.
The Celtic Cabaret. So people were invited to come. What's Kathy Hillier?
Was a very big part of that.
Okay, great. And we had wonderful musicians that night and people in period dress, and it was really, and of course Trish Lindbergh's voice, which was amazing, so it was a really neat event. Another thing that we wanted to do for civic engagement, this was probably one of my crazy ideas, but I said, what if we got every business on Main Street to contribute something? It could be anything. It could be a $5 gift certificate that we put as a raffle prize at the barn raiser. And so Alma Grand agreed to go with me, and we knocked on every door from Samaha's all the way down to, I don't think we went to Rite Aid, but we went all the way down Main Street with our materials. And part of that is not just raising the money, it's actually raising awareness. So all of those businesses learned about this building, and they learned about the care that it takes and the time that it takes to preserve history, and most of them, we didn't get 100% participation, but it was very close. It was probably over 90%, so that was really neat. Other things that we did to raise money was to really talk to, Steve is a very good relationship builder, so he went out into the community and really found the people that were connected to this building historically, the families that have been here for generations, and talked to them about a donation, again, in honor of the preservation of history, and we all felt that was really powerful as well. And that raised some significant money as well. And there's one more interesting thing that we did, but I can't figure it out right now, so I'll come up with it in a minute. Oh, and one thing I did, I thought, why don't we tell the public a little bit more about what we're doing? And so we had a little corner in the Record Enterprise for a couple of years. I don't know if anybody saw it, but it was called the Old Webster Courthouse Corner, or something like that. And so we published a little article every month about what we were doing, which was very fun. And so we raised the money, we were successful. We got both the Preservation Alliance grant and the L-chip grant. And we set about doing the restorations, and we knew right away that we were not builders. We couldn't organize ourselves to do those things. So somebody said, I think Paul Turley would be perfect. He's kind of nearing retirement. He might be interested, and he was an absolute blessing to this project. He took it on, he wanted to join the committee, he offered to do it all for free. And he actually got some of the contractors to give a reduced price as well. So Paul Turley's notes are, part of the restoration involved using materials that were used centuries ago. This was a challenge sometimes. There was square-edged clapboard that was needed, and that was milled by R.P. Williams in Bristol. There was crown molding that was removed at the eaves and milled new to match, also done by R.P. Williams in Bristol. The hardwood floors were sanded and sealed by Vermont Floors. Prep contractors stripped and replaced the roof shingles and replaced them with ones that came close to looking like wood shingles of that period. The two-tone colors were matched to a vintage photo of the building, and the windows were removed and restored by a historic restoration company, and he says Steve knows the name of that.
Oh, yes, yes, I know that. But I think the interesting thing is we didn't have a color photo of the place, but what we did have was a plate. It was a plate that was made in Germany, I think. And so it was colorized, and so we used those colors to recreate the colors that you see out on the building now.
Yes, it is.
Is the plate here? Yeah, I think
Yes,
so.
it is.
Yeah.
It was there. Yeah.
It is now.
Also, interior window casing was painted, and the chimney was repaired using brick and mortar resembling the existing brick. And that was all respectfully submitted by the clerk of the works, Paul Turley. So with that, I will turn it back over to Steve.
All right. And as you can tell, it was a big project, and we were all very happy with ourselves when it was done. But we didn't ever really think that we were done because on the side, we really wanted to improve the condition of our little building because this place needs archive space. And the archive space we don't have. And we have a cellar, but the cellar is not a place to archive things, right? So, so you may hear from us again. We get the OWC committee back together, and you're invited to be part of it when the time comes. We'll ring the bell, and you can all show up, and we'll do it. Oh, we have our first volunteer. Great.
Just a question, what did you
Okay.
do with all the artifacts while this construction was going on?
Oh yeah, those artifacts were packed up, and Bob Crowley, they went up to Bob Crowley's place. Some of them landed in Roger Ellsworth's barn, and so we found spots for all those things. It had to be cleared out of here because nothing but dust and fury in here, and then of course the young lady, the Historic Society was in charge of putting it back together. So that was a big job. You know, you've got what you see here is the recreation in part and the improvement of what was here before. So it's all very cool. And when the ceiling fell, we discovered that the reason it fell was because the people that put the ceiling up the first time, Henry Blair's people, they drove spikes in through through these ceiling boards up vertically, horizontally, vertically, right? Well, guess what? There's no holding power in a vertical spike. So eventually, like people coming in here breathing and shaking, evidently made it fall. Fortunately, nobody was here. So nobody hurt, all is well. And so as of now, the young ladies still remain the owners of this building and can't get out of it because because they signed the paper that they would maintain it in perpetuity with Henry Blair. And so they continue to do it. But I think they do it willingly. I don't think they're really unwilling to do it, but they still can't get out of it. So, and of course, it's serving us now as a museum. And also, these are some of the things that we do here. We do presentations, we do exhibits, we do student visits, we do art shows, we do student engagement, we do have a fundraising concert. Trish, there's Trish. She's having fun. You're in every picture, Trish. What the? How's that possible? No, you missed one. Okay, so and of course we had another 250th celebration. When would that be? I wonder. Right now. We're doing it right now. So this is part of our celebration, what we're talking about right here, right now, as well as the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the Historical Society. So you'll see that sign out front here someplace. And you'll know that we've been at it for 150 years and for 50 years. So, pretty good story, huh? Even Daniel Webster came to help us celebrate, and I hope you made it. I couldn't, but I'm sure Joe does a great job. He's been well trained by Trish, so yeah,
He had it all on his own.
yeah, he did it. So, and our old Webster Courthouse as it exists today, what do you think? I think it looks pretty darn good. So, we hope that you will all visit again soon and often. Tell your friends.
Or
Right?
family, or coworker.
And then when you see this on PBTV, which we're filming now, get your friends to come and look at this unbelievably wonderful presentation. I did say so myself. All right. So thank you all for your attention. We really appreciate it, and we are really happy to be of service to the community and make it happen this way, and maintain our memories in our memory house and our prized possessions as well. So thank you.